Hello again. Another video just to highlight another important change that you might be aware of again, or you might not be aware of, that's happening in the language services sector. It does appear that the changes that I've been discussing and am discussing are solely affecting the linguist. And it's right to say that. However, it is important to note that agencies are also under some specific constraints. And you could argue that whatever deals they are negotiating with the service requester, whether that be, the NHS or, another public service or a private organisation, that it's a competitive market. There are organisations who are undercutting each other. I mean, we're hearing that some organisations are committing to be supplying linguists for £10-11 an hour. And that is ludicrous rates for a professional service. However, bigger constraints around the relationship between the agency and linguist are now being explicitly formed as part of contracts. And what I mean by that is the Crown Commercial Services, who are the one of the large buy-in frameworks for the public sector. Back in October last year, there was the release of a document that was the framework for service providers who were going to tender for the business. Now, this is multi-million-pound contract award, and the usual suspects are in the mix, the large agencies, and more recently, some of you might be aware of the language shop. The language shop is Newham Borough Council. They provide a quality assurance and testing service to the Ministry of Justice contract, whereby they supply quality assurers or people to observe language professionals in action. And they will mark those individuals to the same level as a DPSI testing criteria. Now, with the Crown Commercial Services, back in September or October last year when they released this document, there was another part of the contract dedicated towards quality assurance. And within that contract delivery framework, there were a number of specific clauses that the quality assurer, once they had won the contract, would have to invoke. And they were, number one, the observation and quality assurance of people who are freelancing through an agency to supply their services to the clients within the Crown Commercial Services framework. This would be direct observation, maybe some translation, if there is transcription or things like that. So nothing too different there. What was majorly different, which is going to have an impact on the linguist and also has an impact on the agency, and it's really, really important at this stage to note that there's two parties here that are definitely affected in equal terms. There were clauses relating to the linguist having to demonstrate that they partake in regular continuous professional development. So no longer is a qualification or a master's or a degree in a certain language solely the criteria for a linguist to deliver their services. The linguist has to engage in regular CPD. So one of the clauses in this framework said that the quality assurer can go to the agency and ask to look at or demonstrate that linguists being supplied to a particular contract or site have got a CPD record. So what this means is language professionals, interpreters, translators who are being supplied to these contracts are going to have to partake in regular CPD throughout the year. And to be honest with you, that's a good thing. It's a good thing because it ensures that the people who are supplying the service keep their skills sharp and show that they are keeping their skills sharp. And you'll know as well as I do that there's a section of the language community that are doing this full time. They're making a career out of it. Then there's a huge portion of people who are using their language skills for interpreting as a second job. They may have a couple of different income streams, of which interpreting is one of them. And then there's people who just do as and when, or in fairness, the as and when crew haven't worked out how to acquire more business yet, or more vacancies, not vacancies, more assignments. So immediately, if I was listening to this video, I'd be in a camp where, okay, that's fair, I'm going to keep my skills sharp, make sure that I've got this CPD record so I can be chosen for certain contracts. On the other hand, this is an expense. I've got new constraints placed upon me. Rates are already being diminished. I don't earn as much as I used to. All the, respectfully, the usual feedback that you'd hear if you were listening to this comment about having to get your CPD. I mentioned earlier that it's also unfair for the agencies, and let me just explain how that works. So just to sort of give you a bit of background here, my personal working history is, I spent 10 years in recruitment. That was in different sectors, IT, telecommunications and security. So I've worked for large agencies, I've worked for teams in agencies and headed up teams where we've managed accounts and with the customer created these service level agreements where certain clauses would be apparent in those agreements that are very, very similar to the ones that are in the supply of linguists to public service contracts. And one thing that is really, really apparent now is agencies are asking themselves, is there a risk associated with supplying freelance professionals with CPD? When I say is there a risk in supplying it, what I mean is, can the agency supply directly to the freelancer training or CPD? And the reason it's deemed as a risk is very recently there's been a number of high profile legal cases, one with Uber and another one with Deliveroo. And this is all to do with agency worker regulations in the gig economy, or people who are supplying on a self-employed basis their skills and expertise to an organisation. And it's a very, very dangerous piece of ground for an agency, or should I say some agencies see it as a dangerous piece of ground to be stood on if they are supplying CPD direct, because the consequences are that they are deemed to be entering into an employer-employee relationship with the freelancer. That means they have to pay holiday pay, sick pay, various other things, and there's a cost and an expense to that. However, in the contract that the service requester, NHS or DWP maybe, or some sort of organisation like that, they want the agency to supply linguists that have taken a safeguarding course, taken health and safety, risk management, done a TI, VRI, any other specified training that is put in this contract. So agencies are stood in the middle with their hands tied behind their backs. And, you know, again, I can understand if there's a section of people who might be watching this video who are saying, well, they make enough money anyway, you know, all this holiday pay stuff, they can afford it. And to be honest with you, that's not the right attitude. I understand that many people have had their fingers burnt by agencies, and it's because of the reduction in rates over the years. The fact that linguists, you know, feel really hard done by for a couple of different reasons. Rates are moving down. The request for a higher service level is required. The entry point for people coming into the sector is not as high in terms of qualification expertise as it used to be. Therefore, there's a feeling that the skill is being diminished, or not as valuable as it used to be. And I fully get that, and I can appreciate it. Unfortunately, this thing called market forces and competition means that prices are being driven down. And, you know, I'm not saying that's going to continue, but, you know, it's just something that happens in any industry sector. And therefore, you know, the way that some agencies are going to say, okay, we're going to avoid this, keep our costs down, so on and so forth, is by moving away from the provision of CPD. And therefore, it's the responsibility of the individual, the freelancer, to actually go and find their CPD, go and get it from, you know, whatever central, you know, repository, and collate that record before then they can, you know, supply it to the agency, so that when their client comes to the agency and says, show us all the linguists that you've been supplying, or the quality assurer, who we now know is the language shop, they won that contract for the Crown Commercial Services Framework, goes to the agency and says, show us the CPD records of these people. Then they can do that, and it relies on the linguist and the agency working, you know, hand in hand. Linguist goes and gets their CPD, passes the CPD record to the agency, who can then show it to either the quality assurer or the client that they're working with. And, you know, that this is how it's going to be. You know, it's a really chaotic time in the world of interpreting. And what do you do as a linguist? You know, you've got two choices. You can either bail out of the market and say enough is enough, or you can adapt. And there's, you know, a lot of CPD out there, really high quality CPD that's, you know, easily accessible, and really cost effective and accredited, that can help you quickly and easily to acquire the right type of CPD that will satisfy the quality assurers and the end users and all that sort of stuff. So again, just another bit of news, just reconfirm, CPD, mandatory requirement. Don't be surprised if agencies don't start offering it to you free of charge anymore, because, you know, this is the other strange thing. It's unheard of in most industry sectors that the freelance pool associated with delivering to that market gets their CPD for free. And I think that, you know, there's some part of me, and this might be controversial, it's not meant to be, if you've enjoyed free CPD or been paid to do CPD and you're self-employed, then, you know, you've been quite lucky for some time. And I think that, you know, it's up to you to go out and choose, you know, the right accredited CPD, not just turning up at an event and getting an attendance certificate, but accredited CPD. You know, CPD that means something, that is central to your development, that you can demonstrate easily that you're partaking in this stuff, and be selected for contracts. There's going to be another major organisation that everybody's aware of recently who are going to be announcing their CPD requirement very soon. And the fact is that if you don't have your CPD, you won't be working on the contract. So as soon as that organisation breaks that news, we'll do another video just to support that, just to gather your thoughts. If you've got any comment on this video, please supply it, and interested in knowing your thoughts.